Our ethos is based upon the humanity of hospitality. If you think you're just selling a furnished apartment, then you're absolutely in the wrong business. And I'd even go into, I have no doubt there's a ton of superhosts sitting inside of Airbnb that absolutely embrace the idea that it's hospitality, and a much bigger group that don't, right? And I think those guys probably do really good in the long haul, and our position is it's a hospitality product. It's a fully staffed model. We're not going to try to outthink the tech. A tech can't clean, tech can't service. It might open a door, but let's throw might on that, because that's a 50-50 half the time too. So you got to have people there to solve problems. You got to have people there to create that connection. Our tagline is everyone deserves to feel at home even when they're not.
You're listening to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, a podcast for those who are in and around the hospitality industry who love, live, and breathe what they do. You can join us for candid and unscripted conversations with hospitality experts and founders as we go deeper into their personal stories while they're sharing their triumphs and trials that got them to where they are today. I'm your host, Wil Slickers, and you're listening to an episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, let's begin. Welcome back, Slick Talkers. We are back, and with a very special guest who once joined us on the podcast back in October of 2021. Lee Curtis is the CEO and founder of Reside Worldwide and a hospitality leader with over 30 years of experience in corporate housing and extended stay accommodations. Under his leadership, Reside has partnered with Wyndham Hotels to launch Wyndham Residents, a premium extended stay brand in the U.S. This collaboration combines Reside's operational experience with Wyndham's vast distribution network and loyalty program. Focused on an owner-first approach and professional management, Reside is redefining the extended stay market by prioritizing trust, quality, and sustainable demand. With a presence in over 60 countries, Reside is positioning itself as a global leader in this sector. As you all know, we're going to talk a lot about this in the show. One of the big things is how 2021, 2022 was such a gold rush for operators to get into this space, and Lee had to watch some of the carnage happen and now picking up the pieces. So I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. Let's bring Lee on the show. Let's begin. All right, Lee, welcome back to the show. Long time no see, my friend.
Well, you just told it was 3 years, right? 3 years and a month. So yeah, it's been it seems to be I'm on a 3-year cycle with most of you guys. So I don't, you forget what I said last time. You bring me back and forgive me. So it's great to be back. Thank you. And happy Thanksgiving week.
Of course. Happy Thanksgiving week to you as well. For all the listeners, I'm pretty sure it's going to be past Thanksgiving when this comes out, but we wish you happy holidays as well. Lee, let's jump in. You guys have had quite, after the 3 years and 1 month absence from the show, pretty fun, exciting things. So let's talk about this Wyndham and Reside partnership. What's attractive about this deal for you guys when going in with a brand like Wyndham?
Yeah, so I mean, it's funny. I mean, they say 3 years and 1 month. I mean, the Wyndham deal, if you want to call it that, has probably been incubating for almost that entire time. Kind of was born out of the original partnership we did with Wyndham in our 2 buildings that we've already managed. We have a beautiful building, Beekman Tower in New York City, and then Broadway Plaza in Rochester, Minnesota. And we moved those, and they operate in this furnished apartment, marketplace. We moved them into the Wyndham program under their trademark collection, in 21, and it kicked off a conversation about, the space, the growth of the furnished accommodation space, alternative accommodations. There's 100 names for it. But Wyndham certainly saw the opportunity to grow into that segment and had been looking around, looking for different brands and operators to possibly partner with. And, we started the conversation about how, our 30, 35 plus years of experience, in that space, and, our kind of our acumen in delivering the product and delivering the service and the quality, but equally, our desire to grow, but only through the right channels. And having watched other STR type companies kind of flounder as they took a lot of inventory but didn't really have the back channel to fill it, it really wasn't the direction we wanted to take. But with Wyndham, it was a different idea, and the idea was that Wyndham has 110 million loyalty members. They're the world's largest hotel chain, franchise hotel chain. They're obviously pretty dominant here in the U.S. And they have a big desire to capture the right market share in this furnished accommodation space. So we started the conversations, thought through the processes, thought how the two brands would work together, how we name it, the procedures, the standards. And it took a while to get there, frankly. They're a huge company, but we wanted to get it right. So we finally, formally signed at the end of last year and really started the process to grow into this furnished accommodation space this year. So it's been a great journey so far. We've had a lot of interest early days. So before we made the formal announcement last month, we've been doing some pre-work as we started onboarding a few buildings and have had a tremendous amount of groundswell since, as we've kind of picked up development steam and have started to have multiple conversations around the country with this program.
I love it. So let's talk about that landscape in 2021, because you and I talked about this. All the listeners know I do a pre-chat with every guest, and we talked about the landscape of operators during that time, right? It was kind of a gold rush, 2021, a little bit of 2022. Lots of funding came in, lots of brands going into this multifamily. You had Stay Alfreds, the Domios, the Lyrics, the Front Desks, all of who are no longer here anymore. And it's unfortunate.
You're kind of walking through a graveyard right now, but yeah.
But you guys have been doing it for so long. So obviously you've been able to see this play out over time, not just during this gold rush. So kind of tell me, going through that landscape, partnering up with Wyndham during this kind of beginning phase of a lot of new money and new brands, a lot of venture capital coming into the space. And Michael Golden, one of my good friends and co-host of another show, talks about, we realized, I think through this period of last 4 years, just because there was unit growth doesn't mean there's actually revenue growth, as you see with Sonder, Vacasa, and all these other companies too. So yeah, kind of give me your perspective during that time. All right, Slick Talkers, just as you know, this episode is brought to you by our amazing friends at Send Squared. If you are a hospitality business, entrepreneur, operator, etc., it doesn't matter what sector of the industry you're in, from hotels to short-term rentals to even being your own technology provider, or even like me, a media company, you can use Send Squared. Send Squared is a robust platform for email marketing, text marketing, calling, you name it, and it combines your CRM to make sure that you can manage your brand or multiple brands. I've been running my business, Hospitality FM, without a CRM the entire time. Even when I started Slick Talk in 2018, I still have not had a CRM until working with Send Squared, where we signed a deal to make sure that I'm using it just as much as anybody else that they have signed up with. And I'm not going to lie, it's kind of crazy. I can't believe I didn't figure this out sooner. Jesse, our marketing and SEO consultant, is very happy that we've moved on to this. And so shout out to Send Squared for making our life simpler. If they could do it for us, I know they could do it for you. So grab the link in the show notes, connect with Send Squared. If you don't know who they are already, the amazing team behind the scenes, Nick, Roy, Christy, everybody there is just so awesome. So give them a quick shout out and hello from me to you, or from you to me, from somebody to somebody. You know what to do. Slick Talkers, grab the Send Squared link in the show notes. And of course, like always, we are back to the episode.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. I mean, I have been doing this for 30 plus years. We've seen the product, thrive in most other parts of the world, Europe, Asia, the product itself is called a lot of things, from a part hotel to executive residence to service departments. It's got a wide path of names. It's never made it here. Probably, I think because, here we've had a much more, I think, predictable and somewhat opportunistic growth in extended stay hotels. Extended stay hotels, starting with Residence Inn and all their ilk since then, kind of fill this space a little bit. And for many years, I think that's how it kind of didn't really make it here. But I think, it's hard to ever have these conversations without saying Airbnb, because you have to, right? Because without Airbnb, I don't necessarily know if there's enough magnetism to this space, right? To get people interested. And, frankly, I'm sure, if you look at, and I've seen plenty of the decks of the VC guys, it's all pegged around the Airbnb orbit, right?
Yeah.
We just want
no one else was able to become a verb like Airbnb was.
Yeah. So we want to have a, they want to just get a piece of the pie, and they do some, the normal VC math about exponential growth against, a mean, and, here's how we'll make our millions or billions. And they're right and wrong, right? I think they were right to the extent that the buying public, the consumer, certainly has made a pivot toward something that is not a hotel, right? And I think you have a couple different, reasons why. If you take a look at all the chains, all the brands, I mean, there's, you have to start breaking them into pieces, but there's a lot of old stock out there. And I think people are, not as thrilled to pay, more money for less quality. And now the idea that was certainly, exacerbated during COVID is that, now I know there's something better and something different, and I want to use it. Which is where I think those early guys all benefited, right? Is there was a movement toward these products in certain markets, and they all did something. Like, that's the thing. It wasn't binary. It wasn't like it didn't work. It just didn't work enough. And those early models were all kind of pegged off of, honestly, the old corporate housing model of lease arbitrages. So they were taking tremendous, lease obligations over time, and then having, as an arbitrage, then having to fill them. And, when they're full, and the model looks great on paper. I mean, I can assure you of that. I mean, there's no way it doesn't work to the benefit of the operator if you're hitting 85% occupancy at predicted RevPAR, predicted ADRs. It just flows beautifully. Problem is, if you're only relying on Airbnb and OTAs to drive your revenues, you're not going to get to 85% occupancy with any sustainability. There's not enough back pressure, right? You're competing against too many things, and you're not a brand. So you're just kind of living off the froth of the idea of extended, of short-term rental, frankly. So I think, all those guys were right up to the point they were wrong. And that was, they couldn't get that last couple turns, that last 15, 20% of occupancy. That's the difference between making it or not making it. And frankly, it was very much akin to what you saw with WeWork, and it was all happening at the same time. And for us old guys that have been in the business a while, we were watching it happen, and we're like, how is this different than WeWork, right? It's supply led, not demand led, which means you're taking on tremendous obligations. And then I would double down on it, Will, by saying they all, for the most part, represented themselves as a better operating model because they had cracked the code with technology in their minds, and they could run these buildings with less people and drive better profits. So they were taking people out of the equation. So, and then again, that worked right during that window of COVID, right? So that was like a false positive toward what the buying public was really up for. And during that time, let's face it, March, April, May, June, July, August, it worked, for some, not all, because I mean, frankly, one of those names that you mentioned went out of business right in the beginning of it. So it didn't work for some, but it did allow others to raise a lot of money and run toward that space. Fast forward, most of them have struggled because of what I'm kind of speaking to, which is you can't get there from here. You can't, I'm notorious for saying this, but you can't outbrand a brand. There are a handful of brands, more than a handful, but a decent pile of brands in the hospitality space that have been here and will be here in the future. You can't, I just don't think it's possible to come in as a private label and try to insert yourself in that ecosystem without and I mean serious funding to create the SEO and the brand awareness to take 50 years of branding out of the equation, against a Wyndham, against any of the other brands. So we watched it with curiosity. We we try to be thoughtful about learning from what's happening around us, but we in the back of our heads, like, I just don't see it, and I don't. So, which is why you've seen a pivot even in this space to away from these leases and moving more toward a traditional HMA, a traditional hospitality management agreement, where it's a fee managed system, and it behaves. The product is different, but the process behaves in the same vein as you'd expect to see with any other kind of hotel management program.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I don't know, it's very interesting because it leaves such an open door for conversation around. I love what you said in the sense of, you can't compete with a brand, you can't outbrand a brand, right? And so it's not even the hotel brand. So I look at the Expedia, Booking.com, OTA marketing spending budgets every year, right? They're spending $16 to $18 billion just on marketing,
right?
SEO, all that stuff that we can't compete with as an operator. So it's also coming into play. Like, yes, you could take people out of the picture, add technology, but you're still competing against billions of dollars spent against you in terms of OTAs, the brands themselves, etc. So that makes sense on the Wyndham. Is kind of why the Wyndham deal mostly approaches kind of like you guys.
Well, they're a brand. They have a distinct white space in their brand stack. If you look at all the different brands they represent, right in that upper scale zone is an area they've been putting a lot of emphasis on growing into. They have nothing in the upscale extended stay space. Like for us, as we kind of evaluated the marketplace, we didn't want to be in a competitive brand stack with other equal brands that might be confused with us, right?
Yeah.
So with Wyndham, it's a clean space. We're not, as I like to say, we don't have to go to a Wyndham brand conference and apologize to anybody because we cannibalize something in their market. It's a very distinct product. It's got, it's pretty pliable. It's a soft brand. One of the things I'd point out is, Reside of Wyndham Residents is a soft brand, which means we're able to more or less reverse engineer our way into almost any qualifying product. And a qualifying product would be, a one, studio 1, 2, 3 bedroom, multifamily product with the appropriate amenities, the basic amenities plus. So we can, there's a ground floor and amenities like, gyms and business center and some meeting space and obviously kitchens and washers and dryers. I mean, there's an entire checklist of, basic infrastructure that needs to be present in the building. But it then can go all the way to the extreme. And if you've been to any of the mega projects that have opened up in the last couple of years, there's some extreme examples of amenities out there that, that are nice to have, but all of them work in our ecosystem. We can, we're not going to come in and demand changes to colors and palettes and floor coverings, unless of course they don't meet the quality standards. I mean, for the most part, anything we do in a property will be based upon quality, life safety. Other than that, we're very owner friendly. And we can convert pretty much any type of product. I have 100-year-old products in my in our stack, and we have new stuff coming. And it's exciting because we're seeing the same behaviors as we open as we hoped, which is, Wyndham has a pent up demand for products that are more urban centric, that are in this category, both from their, Wyndham.com bookers to their loyalty members that might redeem, to obviously we'd still, I'm not putting a shine on the OTAs. We're still there too, but the Wyndham brand attracts people because there's something, when you're dealing with this kind of product, it's easy to confuse it with Airbnb to the extent that it's a different style product. So why would people come here versus renting an apartment from Wil in Portland, right? It's going to come because the products might look similar, maybe, but more than anything, they're going to get comfort with the brand, right? They're going to have peace of mind. And that's the thing a brand gives you, is peace of mind that it's legit, right? That you're not going to have some of the downside of alternative accommodation stay. And again, not trying to throw shade, but you're not going to find a camera in our room, right? You're not going to have noise sensors in our room, right? Some of these things that have been the STR kind of, calling card, if you will, are not necessarily showing up. And I don't mean STRs are putting cameras in. I just mean, there's a privacy factor that you don't have to worry about. But yeah, so the Wyndham customer has been very receptive to this product, and we're only at the very beginning. I'm blown away by how, as soon as we turn on the channels, how fast the bookings start to appear. The owners that we've taken over these products for are equally, ecstatic over the volume. But I will say this, and you didn't ask the question, so I don't want to steal one of your questions, but, we are stepping into some of the, failed projects of other, STR brands. And, I would say, as a guy that's been doing this for 35 years, my frustration point would not be that they created awareness. I love the idea that there's a higher level of awareness around what we're doing. I think that's great. My core business, corporate housing, has been operating in the B2B shadows for my entire career. So these, all of them have done a nice job of getting people to think about them. But, back to what you said about technology, you still got to operate a building, and our ethos is based upon the humanity of hospitality. That is what it's about. If you think you're just selling a furnished apartment, then you're absolutely in the wrong business. And I'd even go into, I have no doubt there's a ton of superhosts sitting inside of Airbnb that absolutely embrace the idea that it's hospitality.
Yeah.
Right. And a much bigger group that don't. Right. And I think those guys probably do really good in the long haul, and our position is it's a hospitality product. It's a fully staffed model. We're not going to try to outthink the tech. Tech can't clean. Tech can't service. It might open a door, but let's throw might on that, because that's a 50-50 half the time too. So you got to have people there to solve problems. You got to have people there to create that connection. Our tagline is everyone deserves to feel at home even when they're not. And that's, when we talk to our employees and I visit buildings, it's reminding them that the second that someone walks through that door, how you make them feel will be the starting point to that relationship going forward. Like it's either you're gonna make them feel great, indifferent, or bad, and two of those don't work. Indifference seems to be the key feature of most hospitality experiences these days at the desk. Right? There's just an indifference. They're not happy to see you. They're just, hey, here's your, ID, credit card. Here's your key. Right? Not, hey, how are you doing? How was your trip? Right? I mean, you see it in everything, right? No one asks how you're doing anymore, and we're trying really hard to take what has been our calling card for all these years, because we've had to do this, based upon how we operate as a corporate housing company and through our PropTech 360. We have to create this home feeling through phone calls and emails and texts. Like we have to be actually better at it than when you're standing in front of somebody.
Yeah, no, I love it. And you did go down the rabbit hole that I did want to go down, which is, obviously you guys have an owner first approach. But before we go into kind of that stuff, actually kind of a random tangent and story, but I was in Vegas this last week for the Formula One race, and it wasn't a work trip. It was just a personal, wanted to go experience the race for the first time myself, and have a great week in Vegas or whatever. And I went out of my way every time I was at a hotel front desk or with a staff or anything, how are you doing today? Good to see you. Even if my my key demagnetized or whatever, it's not the most exciting opportunity, but it's hey, how you doing? Here you go. Just need new keys. Here's my ID. How are you doing? And the amount of comments I got back with people thanks for asking how I'm doing, because no one's asked me. And it's just it's really we're having a rough week here, everyone's grumpy or whatever, right? The check-in, 600 check-ins today or whatever. And so it is true. I think the front desk agents aren't getting it back, and they're not giving it because they're not receiving. So a lot of the times it's just becoming a transaction nowadays. Even the wait staff just, yep, here's my order. Leave me alone until I need something. And no one asks them how they're doing. No one, cares to, strike up conversation or whatever. And so it's our world in general just is so transactional when it comes to the experience of travel now. But anyways, that's my tangent slash.
I mean, and well, it's a good tangent. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, I don't know. I think it's been happening for a while. It's certainly, grew. I think that indifference
For sure.
grew after COVID.
100%.
Right?
You're not wrong.
I think it's a tough place to be too, because, it depends. Like I feel really lucky and blessed. I literally stumbled into hospitality at 18. I wasn't looking for it. I was just, going to college and had spent 4 years flipping pizzas. So I had no real inkling of what I was going to do, but I got softly recruited from a neighbor to, work at a Hyatt in 1983, and showed up as, I actually had the crappiest job in the hotel. I was midnight convention services houseman that was like, listen, you're 18, you're by yourself at 11 a.m. or p.m. for 8 hours, and they want you to, clean up the ballroom and set the tables for the morning meetings. And I mean, it was miserable.
Yeah.
So luckily, back then I had great hair. So someone said, hey, you would look good out front. And they made me a doorman. So I was a doorman by the fall, and then bellman, and then front of the house, really, front of the house operations for both parts of my career. I did Hyatt twice, but, found out really quickly, not through any other means, that I had the, what we call the heart of a servant. Like I'm a pleaser. I want to make people happy. I want to engage. I want to, I'm accused of being the mayor wherever I go, but I like talking. I actually generally, I literally like people. I like people, and I like their stories. And, and I think those are the people we try to recruit, because a lot of them interview with me, and I tell these stories, and it's like, I just want you to enjoy, like, there's an energy that comes from taking care of people. If you're not of that cut, it's a tough job. And I can tell you, a lot of these people should not be in the positions they're in, and they should find something that makes them happy, because they're not happy at the desk. And but we can be part of that too, to your point.
100%.
Right? Like we owe it back to the people in the universe to be nice and pay it forward to maybe get it back through other means, right?
Yeah. And there's not, like, I get it, right? Your car demagnetizes, your whatever wasn't set up right, this and that. Like, there's no need to just start, snipping and yepping and being, kind of a complainer. You solve a problem together. Hey, here's my problem. Hope you're having a great day. I just need to get this fixed. What can you do to help? What can I do? Like,
the only thing I'd pile on to is, and I say it in my company all the time, is like the world has gotten away from saying they're sorry as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%.
Right? It's
100%.
like, oh, hey, my key quit working. Oh, let me fix that for you. Hey, have a nice day. Not, hey, I'm really sorry. That happens sometimes. Try this. Don't do this.
Yep.
I mean, it's really unbelievable. Sorry seems to be the hardest word, right? It's a song. And I again, we do calls in our company every Monday, and we pull up all of our guest satisfaction stats globally, and I pick through them, and I just tell stories of why that comment means what it means, and what it could mean, and how it could affect, an outcome, and try to make the dots broader versus don't do that.
For sure. I love that. Well, back to the conversation around like picking up a lot of this inventory that you guys have seen obviously get left behind due to these companies that came in. We talked, and you said you were very owner first, in the sense of, these deals on paper looked great, right? The operator was definitely going to make money if they hit their 85% occupancy at their certain ADRs and all this other good stuff. But where's the owner in this? And so now that you guys are coming in, and, obviously bringing in a brand name too, that adds so much benefit, as you guys have already seen, opening up those channels. What is, the property owner kind of taste or feedback been after all of this gold rush? I'm sure there's been some hesitancy to get back into it with maybe a different model, because, the last guys did it this way, but obviously they're not there anymore. So kind of walk me through that piece.
Yeah, that's been a challenge. I mean, I'll be frank with you. I mean, it's not a halo, the backwash of the others, right? So, on one hand, I think, paving the way, you got to, I used to be on the board of CHPA, and we worked with the futurist once, and he always said it's the thing after the thing, right? And I just always remember that. And, I feel like we're the thing after the thing. Right. So there was that initial gold rush, lessons learned and recalibrate. And then, but we watched it because in our own way, we'd learned those lessons other ways over the 30 years. So we didn't think it was going to work as presented, but the idea of the product made sense. How do you connect a buyer with the product, right? Via a brand. But it took the hotel companies time to mature far enough along, like Wyndham, right? Wyndham just absolutely gets that they needed to find the right operator to do this. But from the owner's perspective, they're burned. We've white knighted a couple things. I mean, last minute calls. Can you help, please? I've been left. They've terminated our relationship and blah blah blah. I have debt service, right? I have, and as we come in, and get involved, I think there's a common theme of just asset disrepair. And I think, I take it personal only because I've been doing it for so long, and we were always owner first, and the asset is the value, and taking care of that. It's like renting a car. There's some people that destroy them, and some people that bring them back full and clean. I'm the latter, and to some extent, these guys treated like these buildings like a rental car on spring break, and turn them in that way. And then believe it or not, it's not like, hey, let's come in and touch it up and be open. Like we literally spend 30, 45 days fixing it, because you can't just not touch an asset
for sure,
for a year or two.
Well, is that because of the staff light model? Like, because, okay, we're going to have, smart lock check-in, no front desk agents. Yeah. Maybe 2 or 3 housekeeping teams.
Yeah,
that's it.
Absolutely. No, it's absolutely the staff light model, because there's no one walking around looking at it. There's no one paying attention to it. There's nobody, frankly, a lot of these guys are new to the biz. They've never had their head in a toilet. They've never cleaned or made a bed or delivered furniture or did all the things that's natural for a lot of us. So they don't understand, when you model this and go, oh, we just need this because that's what our model says. They weren't, when you're building an entire business on the desktop and you have no real world experience in it, it's tough. Like when we sit around and model, we can sit there and have debates over staffing because we know better, right? We know what it takes to do, A, 24-hour operational oversight, B, what it takes to not just clean a room, but keep repair and maintenance right, C, we know what it takes to keep the common areas right. We know we know how to take care of the FF&E, and more importantly, we know how to buy the FF&E. We're coming into programs that went as cheap as they could on the FF&E, the furniture and fixtures, right? And it should last, 5, 6, 7, 8 years if it's bought right and maintained. But if you buy it wrong, maintenance is hard too, right? And I think that's the issue, because they were trying to, because they were taking the lease, a lot of them, they're also buying the furniture. They're trying to manage their money to do it, to make the revenue start to show up. But that's not our model. Our model is a very traditional hotel management model where the owner absolutely knows they buy the furniture. We put a pack together that is probably as competitive as any in the industry, but it's also 30 years of experience. So we know what pieces are going to last. We know which pieces won't last. We know how to work around those things and how to repair and control the FF&E experience. But yeah, I think you're back to what you said. You can't. It's a dirty business. Requires people to do it. If you're not willing to get down on your hands and knees and look under a bed or scrub a corner or just walk through a lobby and pick up a wrapper, you're not really in the hospitality business. And I think that's that's the issue of the property itself. I think for the owner, to answer your question, they like, and I'll quote them, not me, but they like to, they said, listen, it's nice to be working with adults. And that's experience, but that's also approach, right? And the fact that we listen to them and we partner with them and we are there for the long haul. Our relationship on paper is a 10-year relationship. So, we're married to these guys and gals for 10 years. So it's got to work from day one, forward. So we have to make it better for them, easier for them. We have to, it's fun to see them making money because they haven't made money. It's fun to see them get to the other side of things. I have some owners that, I mean, I was just at a property, and I won't call out properties, but I mean, the owner is so engaged. I mean, he's just so excited to have a hospitality product. And he's like, I'm going to do this, and I'm doing this, and we're going to do this. Like, you don't need to do all that. Like, if there's, the ROI isn't quite in all those things, but I get that it's your product. And here's the beauty. We're a soft brand. I'm not going to say no.
Yeah.
Right. I'll say no to something. I don't know what it would be, but nothing you're saying would put me in that category. So it's kind of fun to watch these guys get really excited about being, hoteliers. Yeah, it's, and then, obviously see the experience of the guests and, the fun of operating a product like that.
Okay, earlier on the episode, I mentioned Send Squared. Well, Send Squared is not only the best CRM and a marketing tool for you to use for your business, but when it comes to actually operating your properties, you can get with Hostfully, an amazing property management platform that allows you to sync your technology stacks together while connecting your properties and calendars to the right distribution channels that you need. So if you get with SlickTalk, or if you get with Hostfully, use the code SlickTalk and you will get a special offer from the team. Grab the link in the show notes. Shout out to Hostfully. And now we're back to the episode with Lee Curtis. Yeah, I kind of want to flip a script on you really quick, just because there's conversations we have on this show quite often, especially around the regulatory sector, right? Like a lot of people get into short-term rentals or even boutique hotel ownership. In order to have that hospitality experience, they want to take care of people. They want to serve. They want to see families and groups and all sorts of travelers come through and have a great time. But then, of course, a regulation in that neighborhood or that city comes into place and puts a ban, or like New York's a great example, right? And so you have that, and then now they're becoming advocates and regulators more than they are hospitality entrepreneurs and operators, right? So they're trying to like get involved in governments and like having to be so active in that area that they lose sight of being in the hospitality business. And another conversation, it's the opposite side. People get into hospitality. They get over inundated with tech. Now they're running a tech company, not a hospitality business, because there's so many pieces of technology they have to learn that they don't really know or understand in order to keep up with today's operational, I think, mandate. And then my last one, I promise, I kind of want to get your opinion on, is the ones that, want to get in that hybrid. They want to get in the middle where it's like, yes, I'm taking care of people. We have great tech. We have great operations. We're building a great business model. People are having great moments in this hotel or whatever property. But it is very, very taxing on the human body, human capital, whatever type of term that you want to use. And the little stuff. It's like, man, I got into this business to take care of people, not to be a maintenance person and a garbage man and a housekeeper and like all this stuff. So is there a perfect middle for like hospitality people to take care and have hospitality, but not to feel like they're going one extreme of these different sectors?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're an experienced operator, you can find the middle. I think it depends on where you came from, and where you came from is a lot of times where you end, right? If you're a Silicon Valley group, you can't possibly put out an offering without leveraging the technology as the answer. And, you'll go through some of those. I've seen them. I've seen most of these guys' decks at some point or another. And there's not even a design-led, tech-enabled product. How many times have you heard that? Or tech-forward, design-led. Yeah. And like, where's the people in there, right? So I think, if you come from there, I think you're handicapped to start with, because you don't understand that there's a humanity to it, which is how you behave, but there's a sweat quotient to it, which is how you work. And I do think you can find the middle ground. Like, I've been very cautious about over-teching our experience, because people don't. I mean, listen, I feel like I'm a pretty tech savvy guy.
Well, you guys, when you were on the show the first time, we talked about your prop tech business. And it's a strong business, and it's growing, and it's done great. 360 continues to lead the way, in its approach. We obviously have to navigate the different ways people operate around the world to deliver the experience, but it's tech enabled.
We talk about it all the time, and I can say it on both sides of the house. It's a curated experience, so there's people there making sure things are going right. I think so. I try really hard not to let the tech take over the experience. I think there's no avoiding some things, like this whole, movement toward RFID and phones and all that stuff. Like, I personally don't like it. I rarely see it work. You're constantly fighting it when you go to check into a hotel. It's like, oh, pre-check in and don't come to the desk. And I end up at the desk, right?
Yep.
I don't understand that, right? And I don't think it's necessary. But it's being pushed by, I suspect, the money behind these brands and not just, and I mean the big hotel brands too. There's like someone's 100%. Told them that this is the future, but the backup is come to the desk. So, and probably it works at some point, but it does take the hospitality out of it. And I suspect at the upper edge of hospitality experiences, like when you look at some of the stuff your other show that Sarah does, right? And she goes around the world and goes to these really, really nice places. I don't know how you don't have that gig. Well, you got to switch the gig up a little bit because she's got the better part of the gig, I think.
Yeah, 100%. She does.
1,000%.
Yeah, 1,000%. Dang. I have to do all these work trips, so I don't get to film and have fun with them. I just have to work.
But when you go to those places, like you go to a nice, and I'm jumping around, so I apologize. But you go to a nice place in the Bahamas and check in, right? They bring you to a desk and sit you down and check you in.
Yeah.
I would hope that's there 100 years from now. I really do. That we haven't gotten so sterile with our experience that we don't take the totality of the experience and experience it. Like, you don't want to be in a Starship Enterprise and say, I want a filet mignon and just have it show up. You'd like I'm going to open a bottle for you. And right. And I hope, I don't know, I'm old, so who knows what really will happen. But I think then I'm glad you brought up regulatory, because I think, for us, because it's one of the questions you didn't ask, but it's part of it. It's like, well, what's happening? How do you feel about regulations in your product? And I think it's harder if you're a fragmented kind of alternative accommodation STR player to navigate that, because they're actually that is what they're gunning for
sure.
Right? They're either gunning for you if they think you're taking affordable stock out of a marketplace, and that is, your 5 or 6 major, urban markets. They all have, short-term regulations, whether it's Seattle, New York, Chicago, DC, LA, keep going on the list. It's all your usual suspects. The good news is if you're focused on moving into that space, as we are and some others, there's not workarounds, but there's a path. You just got to get into that path. You either get in that path during entitlements, you get in that path post entitlement. There are ways to legitimately operate a furnished apartment block in every one of those cities. You just can't do it in the shadows. And I think that's where the collision has happened. It's the shadow work that gets done in these industries. That's why in New York, I'd love the real story of what's going on in New York, because there's still thousands of furnished units running through New York the old way. They're just not doing it. They're doing it super in the shadows now, which isn't great for the customer. No, right, at all.
Yeah, especially if you're going like the Facebook marketplaces of the world, right? And then that's how you're booking your stay. It's like, okay, like a little sketch. But I am curious. I am curious though, because like obviously the Wyndham partnership with you guys, definitely a big benefit is. Especially any city sees, Wyndham associated with Reside, like, okay, that's already a big credibility. But a lot of these places I've heard, trying to remember, we had, CEO of Mint House on a while ago and talking about like getting boutique hotel licenses, right? And so like, it's a residential building, it's not fully commercial, but they still get that license and permit. Is that part of the path? Or how do you kind of describe
it's one of many, right?
Okay.
I mean, if you fast forward to the product, right? At the end of the day, what we want is, a good quality, well located, multifamily type product. For sure. In some configuration that still has the aforementioned amenities. The gym, and it has all the things you'd like to see there. Washer and dryer, kitchen, right? Those are kind of not kitchenettes, but kitchens.
Actual kitchen.
There's an actual kitchens. There's a difference there. And what's interesting, so that's the end game, and then you got to, then you just got to figure out how to get there. And every market has a different path. Every product has a different history. The older products are interesting. A lot of the converted products are interesting. The alternative use products that maybe had a history at one time of being a hotel. I don't know, like can take a major city like New York or Chicago, and the original business of that building was a hotel, and then someone bought it, 50 years ago and put apartments in it, but you can get back to it. So sometimes it's about doing the work to get back to its original, state. Sometimes it's converting to your point, and getting a boutique hotel license, because it's essentially what it is. It's it's a service apartment, a part hotel. There's a path there. The thing about it that's always interesting to me, and I think, it is that fact that a city, when this is not in the shadows, when you're in the light of day and you're working, you're a good corporate citizen, you're paying almost double the taxes, right? It's everyone wins. You just have to position yourself as a good, good operator with a pedigree and a commitment to the community. And you're not trying to sneak around. I think this is where everyone gets in trouble. I mean, in the history of the world, no one's gotten kudos for sneaking around, right? Yeah. so and unfortunately, that's what they've the municipalities, and not only them, sometimes just the lease itself. You take a major player, and they'll write a major landlord, and they'll write clauses. You can't do this. You can't do this. And now people are looking for ways around it. But it's just so much easier to be front forward on this one and work through the channels. And sometimes there's no workaround, but there's always some building that has it. Like there's no such thing as one of these cities that has zero short-term rental apartments. It's just, how do you get to them? And then the bonus on that is, while Seattle might have an opinion, the areas around it don't. While New York might have an opinion, the areas around it don't, right? They see the benefit. The big cities just are dealing with a different type of downward pressure on affordable housing, homelessness. And this is an easy one to get people twisted up on and confused on.
Yep. Very confused. Especially because cities don't expand. They're not increasing, their city planners aren't increasing their footprint. And so they're wondering why. Anyways, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But
that's a whole.
Yeah, we've talked about it on the show, and it's the in my opinion, I think the most battles of regulatory issues around affordable housing get lost due to the fact that some cities in over 60 years haven't even thought about increasing or changing their footprint in general. So, but Lee, one of the questions I did want to ask you around this is like the topic of loyalty has become really popular in our industry, as we've seen Marriott Bonvoy hit the biggest membership loyalty program, plus how much their Homes and Villas OTA or channel is being used for point redemption specifically. And, there's a lot of others who I've had on the show. We've talked about, loyalty with memberships versus points versus X, Y, and Z, right? And so taking a brand like, Reside, and now in partnership with Wyndham Residences, and kind of building out this whole soft brand that you guys are doing, where does this take you guys globally? And how does loyalty play an effect on that? Because obviously I can see you have the experience, like you said earlier, the adults are in the room now in these buildings that are, were left high and dry or maybe just low return. But loyalty is pretty important, I think, for everybody, right? Like you still want your brand to be there. And I just want to know how you kind of see loyalty in our industry right now. Where is this going? Obviously, a lot of credit card companies are getting into loyalty. You have Capital One and Amex and even Chase Bank coming out with some, short-term rental type ability to book and use points and all this stuff. So we'll have to know your perspective on how this plays in, and kind of your guys' partnership with Wyndham too.
Yeah, I mean, Wyndham, I think, is behind Marriott, but slightly, 110 million growing. Matter of fact, we started working with Wyndham a couple of years ago. They were at like 100 they're like 98 million. I mean, they've had a huge growth curve in their loyalty membership, and it continues to grow. And so right off the bat, we're affiliated. We're an earning source and a redemption source. So we're part of the ecosystem. So we are now, part and parcel part of the Wyndham loyalty reward system. So our products get both sides of it. So we think it's important. It certainly creates stickiness, with that Wyndham traveler. Wyndham.com, is obviously the goal when you have a loyalty program, not unlike the other brands. So, so for us, it's a win-win. When you talk about global loyalty, while this initiative or this initial movement with these residents is here in the U.S., I can assure you we're having conversations already with others in other parts of the world. And that's not a big stretch for us because it's, I'm not going to marginalize the complexities of international business. But if you think again, like I think at the end of it, it's a furnished apartment, right? So how do you get, what path gets you to it?
Yeah.
And we've done most of those paths globally. I mean, my previous lives, I've operated everything from Dubai to Singapore and everywhere in between. And the calming part of it always, because it sounds big, right? The calming part of it is when you finally get there, it's the same, and so it's just about navigating the two or the 80-20 rule for the most part, permeates the industry. So yeah, I think loyalty is huge. Now I don't have a plan to launch a Reside credit card yet, but and you bring up an interesting point because obviously with Reside and Wyndham partnered, both of us are taking taking not a gamble, an educated, risk. The co-branding. Wyndham doesn't do that typically. We feel really fortunate that not only are they working with us and supporting us in this initiative, but they're allowing the brands to live side by side, which is really exciting for us. I think it shows a lot of faith in what we're doing. I mean, I think it's a demonstration of what I call the incubation period, with the years of us working on it together and fine tuning the program. Doing a few test balloons on it before we launched, and getting it right, and then having their kind of omnipresent support. We have direct access to the top of their company because the thing that's interesting about a soft brand like ours moving into the residential space, and it's obvious, it's not a hotel. Every one of them is different. It's like it's a fingerprint. Yeah, and you have to kind of navigate the nuances of each one of them because they're not boxes, And I think where some of the other brands that are getting into us are going to stumble. When I say brands, I mean the hotel brands, is they're going to overbrand it. And I think this is a product that if you really want to resonate with the buyer, to me, the buyer has spoken. And the reason I say that is Airbnb exists, right? Airbnb would not exist if the buyer didn't have an issue. And now it's, the biggest hospitality brand in the world. So so you have to think about, well, what are they looking for? Well, it's not the tech, right? It's the experience. It's, it's having access to something that isn't like everything else. So
I love it. Well, I have two kind of rapid fire questions for you. Not really like rapid. You don't have to say it in less than 30 seconds or anything, but this is kind of some fun ones to end because I think we kind of did this in our last episode. And so I would love to know, what is one of your favorite cities to travel to for business or leisure? It doesn't have to be one or the other.
It's easy. Everyone's always like, really? But I love Chicago, man. I love Chicago. I spent a lot of time there over the years. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it because I just don't think there's anything cooler than a Cubby game in the summer. I'm a Detroit Lions guy. I'm from Michigan. I'm a Detroit guy. I'm not going to say Detroit yet, but Chicago, man. I mean, in the summer, it's awesome. The best waterfront there is in terms of the Midwest. And yeah, it's hands down Chicago.
All right, good to know. I'm going to check out Chicago in the summer.
Let me know.
Yeah. What is one hospitality trend you think is overhyped at the moment?
Overhyped.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think we just kind of hit on it, so I'm going to repeat myself. I just think this whole checking in on your phone thing, and communicating via the phone is, to me, it's overhyped. Again, it's hospitality. You should be able to go talk to people. And, one of the things I find interesting and has happened to me as I travel is you roll into a hotel, at midnight and you didn't have a reservation for some reason. Maybe the flight was delayed or whatever. You roll into a hotel, go to the front desk and you say, I want to check. I like a room. Do you have availability? Mm. And they're like, you need to go, use the app. Mm-hmm. They won't even take the reservation at the desk. And I mean major brands.
Yeah.
Major brands. So
it's almost like they despise
what is going on?
Yeah, they like despise you making a reservation with them. No. It's like, what?
Yeah, I was on a trip at a conference a couple weeks ago, and I got there first, and it's happened before, because when you do your reservations this way, you don't get to put two people on the reservation. Oh. So I'm like, oh crap! My wife's coming. I'm not in the building. I got to get her name on the reservation. I mean, I had to step out of an investment meeting for 30 minutes while I went through a call tree and got a supervisor to put her name on the reservation so she could check in.
Yeah,
as she's standing at the desk.
Yeah, it's wild.
I mean, what is happening? So
you and I are in the same boat on that one. When I was in Vegas, at 7:30 in the morning called the front desk, and I had to go through multiple different number dial trees just to get to a offshore phone person who then called the supervisor to then give me permission to check out an hour later. It was so weird. It's like, it's 7:30. It's 7:30 in the morning. How is there no one at the desk when
you're not even talking? Yeah, you're not even talking to the desk.
No, it's not the desk. I'm like, how? I press 0 or I press the front desk button and it goes.
So I got into the loop, and somewhere I got a supervisor. There's so much going on that day. They gave me a secret word to say that triggered something.
What?
Yeah, and I can't remember what it was, but it was a word, and then it pushed me to some other place, and then I was able to solve my problem.
That's insane. Here's the secret passcode to go solve your own problem.
Simon Says.
Yeah, I don't know. That's wild. All right, my last question for you is: what's the best advice you received in your career? I think I know the answer based on the theme of this conversation, but I want to hear from you.
Well, I'll tell you, it's all tied to the same thing. So I would say one of the coolest things that happened to me early on as a very, very young bell captain, like way ahead of schedule. I was a bell captain when I was like 19 and a half. And that, if you know anything about the world of Hyatt, that doesn't happen, right? That tells you how good my hair was. So I was a bell captain. And sat in my very first meeting with the general manager, with other department heads. I was somehow a department head too, go figure. Mm-hmm. And he was a Cornell grad, and this is when Hyatt used to hire these freaking hot shots. They probably still do, but I mean, these guys came out of like Swiss schools and Cornell. And he gave all of us Dale Carnegie's How to Influence and Influence People as a book. And so the advice would have been read the book, but the imprint left on my psyche, my soul has never gone away. Authenticity, humanity, kindness, mostly just about being yourself, but knowing how it affects others. And, I've tried very hard in my career to run a company like that and to be that person, right? I like to think that if you met me, face to face or if anyone did off this podcast, they go, oh, he's just like that. I mean, I'm just this guy, I don't have a third gear. So, but yeah, that's the best advice and then I've since then paid that forward. So I buy these books for people and give them to my company. And, I'm always just fascinated by the simplicity of that book. And I think it's timeless. So
I got to meet you at I think Las Vegas.
Verma.
Yeah. And I was like, heck, he's the same guy that I had on the show. It wasn't like they're like, oh, this podcaster guy wants to say hi. Great. Yeah, he's gonna.
Yeah, you too. You too, though. I mean, and I think that's a tribute to you, and likely why your show is so successful, and your family of shows is successful. Is you're authentic, and I think if you're in this. Listen, if you've got the word hospitality in your microphone, you can't hide from it. You can't 100%. Be something else. So I think it's
They usually say don't meet your heroes, but I think it's in this industry. So
I think that's just sport. I think that's just sports heroes.
Yeah, exactly. I got to meet Bruce Butler, the announcer for the MMA, during the Vegas F1. Not a guy you want to meet in person. Way overhyped.
Who did my dad meet that he was really disappointed? He stood in line to meet the old man from remember Orange County Choppers.
Oh,
remember
yes.
the guys?
Oh,
remember
yes.
the guys that made
my dad made me watch that with him all the time.
Yeah. So my dad, we all watched it because it was cool back in the day. And then my dad stood in line to meet him, and he goes, "God, what a supreme disappointment." I won't use the words he used, but supreme disappointment.
Supreme disappointment. So accurate. So accurate. Oh my gosh. Well, Lee, thank you so much again for taking the time to join me on the show. For the listeners, you guys can all check out the links in the show notes, LinkedIn, website, all the good stuff. We're going to include the episode that you're on, obviously, Lee, back in 2021, for anyone that wants to go back and hear some more pretext about your career and industry experience. And yeah, I just want to say thank you again for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. It was a quick hour.
Yeah, it was. It really was. For all the Slick Talkers, you know exactly what to do. Show Lee the love and support that you always give us every week. Like and subscribe to All Things Reside. Make sure that if you talk to Lee, mention Lee, or not mention, meet Lee, or connect with him on any social media, let him know that you heard him from Slick Talk. And of course, like always, we'll see you guys again next week. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Wil Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week.